Hello, everybody, and welcome to our Stay Healthy at Home webinar series. Today, you are attending Augmentative and Alternative Communication. It's February 23rd, and as always, if you have any questions, comments, or you want to leave any feedback, you can do so in the questions box. If we don't get to your question during the webinar, we will definitely return a response within 24 hours. And also you'll note that there are two PDFs for you in the handouts. One is a brochure and one are the slides for you to take with you. So we, the New Jersey Self-Advocacy Project, are a division-funded program with the ARC of New Jersey. We have been since 1980. We support the state's largest network of individual self-advocates and self-advocacy groups. We also provide comprehensive trainings and resources to self-advocates, family members, direct support professionals, and agency personnel. So today we have a guest presenter, Kate Flaxman from Advancing Opportunities. She is the Augmentative Communication Specialist for Advancing Opportunities. She has had a diversified experience working with individuals with complex communication needs, in schools, adult placings, homes, and also for employment. She strives to promote communication for the purpose of improving lives through interactions with parents, peers, caregivers, and school personnel. And that is Kate's email if you have any other additional questions. So as always, if you want to be on the email list to get notices and updates about our future webinars, you can click here to do so. And I'd like to be a part of our Healthy Life Project Lab, which are live interactive activities and sessions we hold Wednesday at 11 at 1 p.m. You can do so by clicking there. And if you would like a free training, you can reach out to us by going to this website or clicking where it says NJSAP homepage, and you can see a list of all the trainings that we offer as well. And everything is available on our YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter pages. So now I'm going to turn it over to Kate. Kate, thanks so much for being here. We're all very excited.
Well, I'm happy to be here today. So I'm going to be talking about augmentative and alternative communication. I work for Advancing Opportunities. We are a nonprofit in the state of New Jersey. I work for their assistive technology program, and we serve individuals with all disabilities. We typically work with state agencies such as the Division of Vocational Rehab, Division of Children and Families, school districts, the Division of Developmental Disabilities, the Veterans Administration, and the TBI Fund. Those are some of the agencies that we work with. I just put in, we have a YouTube channel, and that's our website if you would like more information about any of our programs. We have a technology lending center where you can try equipment before you make any purchases. It's not just for augmentative and alternative communication. We have lots of other things like adaptive equipment. You can borrow it for 4 to 6 weeks. The program is free. We ship everything via UPS, and you just ship it back to us. And I put Tara's information in there. She's the Technology Lending Center coordinator. So that's all in your slides. My background is that I am a speech language pathologist, and as Erin said, I provide augmentative and alternative communication evaluations and trainings throughout central and southern New Jersey, primarily ages 3 and up. I work with about half of my caseload is adults at this point. So Today, we're going to be talking about what is augmentative and alternative communication, who can benefit from AAC, examples, some myths, and then I will wrap everything up and have time for questions. So, what is augmentative and alternative communication? It is abbreviated AAC because it's really long. Augmentative is meaning to enhance oral speech, so it is something that is used in addition to. When we talk about alternative, we do talk about it in place of oral speech, and it encompasses all forms of communication. So we will talk about things that we all do that are augmenting our communication. So it encompasses numerous modalities, and we'll talk about some of those modalities a little bit later. It can be used temporarily or permanently. So somebody who is sick and in the hospital and unable to communicate using speech may use AAC temporarily, and somebody who requires AAC for longer may use it for their entire life. It can help people understand what is said to them, like they're improving their receptive language skills, as well as helping people more effectively or efficiently communicate with others, assisting in their expressive language skills. So it can be used both ways. It doesn't just have to be used for the person to communicate with someone else. It can be used to communicate with the individual with a disability. AAC really is a set of tools and strategies. Because it encompasses a very wide range of modalities, and it is used to improve the success and effectiveness of communication. So it makes communication easier and more reliable in many cases. We all use multiple forms of expression in addition to oral speech. We use email, we use text messaging, we use emojis, we use gestures when we point to things, we use our body language. All of that is really considered augmenting our oral speech. This is a quote from the United States National Joint Commission on Communication Disorders. The ability to express oneself is considered a basic human right. And they actually created a communication bill of rights. And the Communication Bill of Rights states that all people with a disability of any extent or severity have a basic right to affect through communication the conditions of their existence. Beyond this general right, a number of specific communication rights should be ensured in all daily interactions and interventions involving persons who have severe disabilities. So, and then they list the actual rights. So some of the rights that they include are things like not just requesting, but to be able to express preference and feelings, to be able to make comments and share opinions. And when I hear that people are able to communicate their wants and needs, I always ask, is that enough? Can we provide additional methods of communication in order for them to communicate more, to be able to participate more fully in their lives and improve their meaningful relationships? So I like talking about how all the things that AAC can do for people. So it increases independence. It is able to replace or reduce maladaptive behaviors. Frequently, the individuals that I work with have a lot of communication frustration. They engage in things that negatively impacts their relationships, and AAC really can improve and strengthen those relationships. AAC can strengthen social connections. It allows people to communicate about a wide variety of topics and share things with each other that really creates meaningful relationships. And it also allows access to education or vocation. So allowing somebody to communicate with less familiar, unfamiliar communication partners in a job setting, for example, leading that increases their independence, but it also provides opportunities for employment. So I have a video I like people to see. However, I am going to include a content warning because the individual in the video is talking about an abusive situation. The video is about a minute and a half long. If you wish, you can mute your speakers until the video is over. I will switch slides once I stop talking about the video. Let me make sure this works. Let's see.
Hi. Wait. More. I wait for.
But John, you've told me quite a story. Why don't you hit speak display so everybody can hear?
Why did it stop?
Hear the whole story. Thank you.
It was time to eat. I wait and wait. No one here. No one comes. I'm afraid no one here will help me eat. I wait for. He come and say to me, you don't tell. He beg and weep. He go away. I wait for.
Well, I'm glad you could tell me about it. Is there something you need me to do to fix it? You're going to take care of it yourself. Excellent.
So that is one example of why access to AAC and with all parts of speech is so important, because the individuals that that many of us work with or know are at risk, and they need to have those not only meaningful relationships where they can share information, but they have to have the ability to be able to share that information. And why isn't my slides in? There we go. We all experience communication breakdowns. Communication breakdowns is defined as a misunderstanding or a lack of understanding of an intended message. And these communication breakdowns increase when we're emotional. I always tell people that I am an awful communicator when I am super excited about something or I am very upset about something, and many people feel the same way, that they're poor communicators when they're experiencing emotions. These communication breakdowns tend to have unintended consequences, and augmenting oral speech during communication breakdowns can improve communication, and it can also minimize communication breakdowns and improve overall interactions. The goal of AAC is to really increase the effectiveness of communication. And effective communication occurs when the intent and meaning of one person is understood by the other person. And using multimodal communication, it really improves that effectiveness. For many, we place a focus on oral speech. However, I emphasize that how the message is communicated is less important than the successful understanding of the message. So if I point to something and somebody brings me the item I pointed to, and it was a successful communication interaction, then it doesn't matter that I didn't say anything during the interaction. Or if I start crying because I'm upset about something and somebody else in the room gives me a hug, it doesn't matter that I didn't have to say I feel sad. My body language and my facial expressions were able to sufficiently communicate my message. Now, who uses AAC? As I said, we all use multimodal communication to augment our oral speech. However, individuals with complex communication needs tend to need to augment their oral speech or use an alternative form of communication due to their disability. And complex communication needs can result from either developmental or acquired disabilities. Some things that are developmental in nature, such as intellectual disability, cerebral palsy, autism, Down syndrome, any wide variety of genetic disorders, and then things like that are acquired, such as trauma, illness, and degenerative diseases like ALS is a frequent one. Many people who use AAC to augment their communication have clearly stated that using AAC is beneficial in many situations because they cannot always rely on speech to generate a clear message. People who have more who need higher levels of support in some situations have found that being able to augment their communication and not relying on oral speech is very beneficial when in other situations they would be able to communicate effectively when they have lower support needs. I'm going to emphasize that AAC is a tool, just like a wheelchair is a tool, and it can be used all of the time or part of the time. It is definitely not all or nothing, and being able to have that choice of when you are able to use AAC as a tool is really important for many people. So total communication is honoring all communicative attempts. We are all total communicators, and many of the individuals that I work with have are able to utilize different communication modalities which support their functional communication. However, we as communication partners also need to recognize and honor all of their communication attempts, because many of their modalities are going to be non-standardized. So maybe they are pointing to the kitchen when they're hungry, and we need to learn that when they point to the kitchen, that means that they're hungry. And next time we see them pointing to the kitchen, you'll say, "Oh, are you hungry? Do you want a snack?" And being able to recognize that is that they are communicating something, and that that they do have a message. So when it comes to AAC, I like talking about the least dangerous assumption, which is a term that is used a lot in inclusive education, and it is defined as, in the absence of conclusive data, decisions should be based on assumptions which, if incorrect, will have the least dangerous effect. So if there's no downside to providing more communication supports, then we should be providing additional communication supports for people. So can the person communicate more or better than they already are? If the answer is yes, then we should be providing additional AAC support. And can we give, and if in which case we should be able to supplement what they're already using to decrease communication difficulties. Communication autonomy is the ability to say what you want, when you want it, to whomever you want. If you can't do any of those steps, so if there's a breakdown at any level, you need to find another communication modality which will meet those needs. So if I have the ability, if I can't say, you know, I'm feeling nervous, then I need that somebody needs to give me the ability to communicate that message. If I can say it, but I can't communicate it when I'm feeling nervous, then I need to augment it in that time period for when I need to be able to communicate it. If I can say I feel nervous when I'm feeling nervous, but the person I'm telling it to doesn't understand what I'm trying to communicate, and I'm experiencing a communication breakdown because I can't communicate to my communication partner, then I need to augment my message. So if you look at it as you need to be able to do all three of those levels, otherwise you should be adding an additional communication modality to what the person is, where the breakdown is occurring. And we tend to do this very naturally. When we experience communication breakdowns, we change up how we're saying it or what we're saying, or you know, we reword things, or we use gestures, or we'll try to explain something differently, or use pictures. You know, I'm trying to describe something, so maybe I'll Google something and I'll show an example, and we add different communication modalities to minimize those communication breakdowns. So looking at all of the things that people need to be able to do, and this is kind of the starting point when I look at providing AAC to individuals, like what what out of this list can somebody already do, and what are their goals? What do they want to be able to do, or what do we want them to have access to be able to do? And usually it's a good chunk of these things. You know, maybe they can already get their wants and needs met, but maybe they can't ask or answer questions. Maybe they have difficulty expressing feelings or opinions. Maybe they don't complain. Maybe they need a way to complain. Directing the actions of others, or directing the actions or behaviors of caregivers. Frequently, a lot of things are done because it's part of the routine, and nobody really asks for an opinion on you know, what should be done or how it should be done. So these are all things that we can provide access to in the form of vocabulary, pre-stored messages, and things like that, so that people have the ability to participate in their care and really communicate. So just to reiterate, we can explore AAC as an option when a current mode of expression does not support somebody's communication or language abilities, with familiar communication partners, with unfamiliar communication partners, and for any part of the day. Now we're going to talk about some examples of AAC, and they're broken down into two categories. The first category is unaided, which doesn't require the use of anything other than your body. So things like facial expressions and body language, gestures, pointing, sign language falls under this category. Vocalizations, things that are maybe standardized to a person, but not necessarily oral speech. And then the other category is aided. So aided AAC modalities require other pieces. So things like paper systems, paper communication systems, pictures, letter boards. This is also where technology falls in as a communication modality. And many of these things are things that we all do, using paper and pen, email, texting, GIFs, emojis. Those are all, we don't think about them as aiding our communication, but they do. They augment our oral speech, and they also contribute to our improving our communication. AAC typically involves symbols, symbols of all kinds. So whether it's sign language as hand symbols, or photographs, line drawings, the alphabet are symbols themselves, and symbols all represent messages. So here are some examples of paper-based communication systems. Starting on the top right corner, that's a pod book with a dinosaur on top of it. And then there's a core board underneath that. That's the all of those have pictures. There's a PECS book. People are very typically familiar with PECS, the picture exchange communication system, where you take off a picture from a board and you hand it to somebody to complete the request. And then there's a flip book. And then there's also, I didn't picture it, but there's also alphabet boards that are paper. So typically they look like a keyboard. Sometimes they have words that are already, or messages, commonly used words or messages that are also included. And then talking about some technology options, which are, technology has changed considerably in the past 10 or so years when it comes to AAC. old communication devices that were touch screen were extremely heavy. The touch screens work differently than our current touch screens. They were bulky, and they have definitely changed. Nowadays, you can get AAC apps for already existing tablets or existing tablets or phones. So typically, they're Apple apps. A few apps do exist for Windows, Android, and Kindle products. The touch screen is dynamic, and they do include voice output, unlike unlike the paper options, and the capacity is for more extensive vocabulary. The pros of using technology are that you can make very robust systems with all parts of speech with huge language growth potential. Another pro is that you can quickly change vocabulary. They have voice output. They really do support language development. And some of the cons are the cost. They can be broken, they drop and break, technology breaks. So here's some examples of some AAC apps. You'll see that they have different language systems, and some are category based, some are organized differently, and this is a few more. There's a lot out there. There's a huge range in products and complexity. The more complex systems are typically more user-friendly. I always get asked, are there free options? Yes, but they are going to be extremely limited and potentially less user-friendly from the AAC user's standpoint, because they'll be so limited in the amount of vocabulary and access and organization. And then some keyboard options. So on the other side of technology, while there are numerous off-the-shelf technology options these days, there has been and there will always be options that are considered speech-generating devices. These are designed specifically for face-to-face communication. The only thing that these systems typically do is for communication, and that is a requirement of Medicare, Medicaid. So they're fundable through insurance, private health insurance, Medicare and Medicaid. An evaluation will be required for it to be funded. You can't just reach out to your insurance company and say, I would like one. These also have touch screens. They look very much these days like your tablets. They're purchased directly through the device manufacturers, as opposed to going to Best Buy. And similar to the iPad options, they also have touch screens with voice output and the capacity for more extensive vocabulary storage. So these systems themselves are designed to be for communication. So, and these days, way back when everybody knew the word Dynavox, yes, it's now Tobii Dynavox. There's other companies, PRC and Sautillo, Lingraphica, those are a few. So I always like to touch base on the fact that there are options out there for access for individuals who have difficulty selecting with their finger on a touch screen. You don't have to have an incredible point to be with your index finger in order to communicate. There's other access modalities like switches, eye gaze, and head pointing. We can modify devices themselves to have things like key guards, which are plastic overlays that create an actual physical grid on top of the screen. My take home point is we don't want to limit access to communication based on physical abilities. There's frequently modifications that can be done to systems, or things like partner assisted scanning and things like that will give access to communication to individuals who have difficulty with physical access. So some barriers to AAC include the evaluation process. It is recommended that if somebody is looking for augmentative communication, that they receive an evaluation from a speech language pathologist. There's a high rate of device abandonment or lack of use. Some of the reports I've read say that up to 1/3 of all systems abandon up to 1/3 of all AAC systems are abandoned. And there's frequently a lack of buy-in from the caregivers or the team. Using AAC is very slow. There's especially in our current fragmented adult system, sometimes there's a lack of collaboration in terms of getting the day program and the group home or the family and everybody using the system with the individual to really emphasize how important communication is. There's a lack of training time and things like that as well. And those are some barriers that we face when implementing AAC. And then there's some actual user barriers in terms of staffing turnover, staffing ratios, things like that. If someone is an adult, they have learned communication habits. We all do with family members or familiar communication partners. So changing that when it comes to implementing a new AAC system is difficult. It can be done, but we all have those patterns of communication that are ingrained, and it's worked for that individual for their entire and the family for their entire lifetime, and changing that communication habit is difficult. And then preconceptions of individuals and stakeholders. So I frequently get told, that's too difficult, or the person can't do that, or they don't need to be able to say that. Setting very low expectations and goals is common, which creates a barrier to AAC, because if we're setting the bar low, they're not gonna be able to learn more, and we're not going to give them access to more. AAC, it's never too late. It will take work. What is the individual already doing for communication? How are they communicating? What is their motivation? What do they like talking about? Who would they like to communicate with? And thinking about that and starting there in terms of creating motivating messages and opportunities for communication to increase communication. If you need an AAC evaluation, if you're an adult, you can seek out an evaluation through your DDD support coordinator. If you're school aged, request an evaluation through your child study team. An AAC evaluation should be done by a speech language pathologist with experience in AAC, and the technology, if technology is recommended, can be covered by a variety of funding sources. Don't look at access to the actual communication device in terms of funding as an issue. Especially in New Jersey, we are extremely fortunate to have some great funding options, and that tends not, in my experience, obtaining the device is not the barrier. Looking at, training time and things like that become the barrier. So once you have a system in place, now what? AAC is unfortunately not magic. I wish it was. It requires supports from communication partners. It requires a level of training as well. Therapy with a speech language pathologist is frequently recommended, and caregivers and family and any support team will require training in order to customize, update, and support an AAC system. It's not complicated. There's a lot of resources out there. However, it is necessary to have some professional support in there in order to make significant progress. In terms of implementation, we focus on what's called aided language input, which is teaching AAC by speaking AAC. So if somebody has a communication board and we want to teach them how to use it, we can't just hand it to them and expect that they're going to know how to use it to communicate. So what we need to do is essentially talk to them in using their communication board. Just like I always equate it to, if we were teaching somebody a new language, we wouldn't just be able to drop them off in a foreign country and say, okay, there you go, now speak the language. They would have to really spend time being immersed in the language in order to learn how to speak it. So making sure that if you want to teach them to communicate frustration, for example, or anger, any of the emotions, you would need to first of all make sure that they have the vocabulary so that they could communicate those messages. And then when you yourself or you're watching them experience one of the emotions that you want to teach them how to communicate, you access it on their communication device by however they access it, by pointing or whatnot, and maybe you'll say, oh, I see you feel you look happy right now, and you'll show them on their system how they can say happy. Or maybe, you know, you're frustrated by something, and you'll say, I feel frustrated, and you'll point on their device and show them where the word frustrated is, so that they can see how the words fit on their communication system, fit in with conversation and everyday interactions. And this consistent use is really important. If the communication system is sitting on a shelf or in their bedroom, they're not going to go and get it when they need to communicate something. It needs to be right there, sitting with them. I always say within arm's reach. If it's not within arm's reach, it's not going to be used. It can't just be on the kitchen table while they're hanging out watching TV, because if they want to change the channel, they're not going to get up and go look for their communication device to ask you to change the channel. They're probably going to grab the remote and change the channel. And so making sure that it's accessible and the messages that somebody wants to communicate are available is really, really important. I'm going to go through a few myths, and then I have a short video to play at the end. So we're just going to wrap up. And so some myths of AAC that I've heard, AAC is a last resort, meaning we've tried everything else and AAC gives up on speech. And it couldn't be further from the truth. If you look at AAC as a tool, we can start using AAC but while we work on speech and while speech improves. It is not one or the other, and AAC is used concurrently with oral speech. Another myth I've heard is it's too early or it's too late. It's too early, I frequently hear with the early intervention set. I don't know what they're waiting for. And it's too late, I hear when I'm working with my older adults. I have given first-time AAC systems to individuals who are in their 60s and 70s. I have an eval coming up for somebody who's even older. It's never too late to improve communication and improve those relationships, and it's definitely never too early to set good foundations for both receptive and expressive communication. I also hear AAC will inhibit development or use of speech. It's actually, the research has shown that it positively impacts speech, that frequently when you give somebody a standardized communication modality with all parts of speech, that their oral speech frequently increases. I see it as kind of taking some of the pressure off of them to use oral speech, but their communication skills definitely improve. Another myth I hear, there are necessary skills before introducing AAC. This also goes hand in hand with I have heard that they need to that some of the maladaptive behaviors need to be modified before introducing AAC. And nothing can be further from the truth. There are no necessary skills before introducing AAC. There is a little joke in the AAC world that if somebody, that if somebody is is able to breathe, they're able to use AAC, meaning don't withhold AAC just because they're not demonstrating skills. So that is, there's nothing that they need to be doing. They don't need to have things like joint attention. They don't have to be able to identify pictures. None of that. I also hear start with a limited vocabulary. The research has shown that starting with a limited vocabulary frequently leads to device abandonment or system abandonment because the words that somebody or the messages that somebody wants to communicate are not available. So making sure that you don't start with, a choice of 4. What happens if they don't want any of those 4 things? They're not going to use it. And then what happens is that their communication partners say, see, he can't do it. And I turn around and say, well, maybe he doesn't want one of those 4 things. So definitely you don't have to start with a limited vocabulary. I strongly recommend not starting with a limited vocabulary. High-tech AAC is not considered screen time at all. It's a tool for communication. People don't become dependent on AAC devices. It's not possible. It's a tool and it only improves their lives. And AAC does not replace verbal speech. People communicate in the most effective, efficient way possible. So AAC won't replace something that is, verbal speech will always be more efficient. So because it's easier to just say something than it is to locate the vocabulary on a system or to type it out. So if they can communicate, they will. Okay, this is a short video. Chris Klein is the gentleman speaking, and let's see.
I do live on my own, but I do need assistance 4 times a day. I need help with my personal care tasks. I need someone to feed me breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I have to have someone get me up and help me shower and get dressed in the morning. These tasks are usually daunting for someone like me. The reality is many people with a disability try to find someone to live with them so that they have someone always available if they need help throughout the day. I'm not a typical person with a disability. I live by myself, and I am able to live by myself because I have developed a great community. In the morning, I do use a home care service. I use a home care service for the morning because it is a little more involved. They have to shower and dress me. It only takes them an hour to do, and by 8:30 they are out the door. I am by myself from 8:30 until noon. When noon comes, a friend comes to give me lunch. I have about 35 friends doing a lunch, dinner, or bedtime once a week. They are here for only an hour, and then the rest of the day I am able to function on my own. My AAC device makes this possible because when I need something, I am able to call a friend to come over. I have friends that live right in my neighborhood, so even in an emergency, I can call a friend, and he or she can get to my house as quick as possible. I believe in building community, and I know that can be difficult for some to do. People that have a communication disability have a really difficult time forming relationships because they have a difficult time getting into a conversation with anyone. So Steve, tell me what you first thought after experiencing communicating with me for the first time.
You know, the very first time that I communicated with you, it was a slow process. I mean, this was many years ago, 15 years ago. And so the early on process was slow, a lot of patience. I wanted to fill in gaps. And things have changed a bit, haven't they, Chris?
Yes, they have. This is where an AAC system can make a huge difference in a person's life. Yet, we need to educate people about what AAC is. Typically, when someone meets a person that uses AAC, he or she doesn't know how to interact with them. When this happens, the person says hi and walks away. He or she assumes the person couldn't understand them. People need to understand that people that use AAC are well educated. We want to talk to you. We want to build a relationship with you. AAC gives a person the opportunity to have a life. I have been using AAC for over 30 years now, and it has given me a life. It has given me the opportunity to build relationships, and those relationships have developed into a great community. The community I have built has given me the freedom to live on my own.
So that was a little video. Chris Klein is, he uses his toe to access his communication device. I've seen him speak in person, present in person. And he talks a lot about building relationships and things like that. So with that being said, I hope you've learned a little bit about AAC today. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them. If anybody has any questions that they want to email me outside of this, you can please feel free. That's my cell phone number. I use it as my work number. And you can certainly reach out at any time. And then there's some in the slides. There's some local assistive technology resources, and I'll put my contact information back up there. So
Excellent. Thank you so much, Kate. That was fantastic. So there are some questions in the chat. Caitlin asks, what are your thoughts on facilitated typing? I worked in a day program with autistic adults, and this was a way for some to communicate. They use a whiteboard that had printed letterboard on it.
So facilitated typing, meaning somebody was holding that letterboard. So ASHA's stance is that ASHA is the American Speech Hearing Association, is that the goal is independent communication. We don't want, I don't want to have a modality where somebody is relying on a communication partner to hold their communication system. There could be some inadvertent movement on the part of the communication partner in terms of moving the board and things like that. There are some concerns with generating messages, but that's a much larger conversation.
And then Julia wanted to add that she has friends who have Down syndrome and talk, but I have a very hard time understanding some of them. What should I do?
Would they be interested in, I mean, talk to them about if they'd be interested in, you know, maybe they can type, or maybe they would be interested in exploring AAC to improve some of those interactions, and maybe share with them that you don't understand them, because I don't know if sometimes people realize that others don't understand them, or that they're difficult to understand, especially when they're so comfortable that you kind of just say and we tend to do that because we don't want to make somebody feel bad.
Excellent. So, James asks, any vendors you would recommend in North New Jersey? I'm a DDD support coordinator who works with several individuals who use AAC, and the upgrade process has been slow over the years.
Oh yeah, so advancing opportunities, we cover the entire state. So if you're interested, you could definitely either reach out to me and I'll get you in touch with that. I don't know anybody. Oh, there is somebody else up north. If just send me an email and I'll give you all of the resources for that. That's definitely possible.
Excellent. So that are all the questions that we have, but that is Kate's information. You can always email us as well at NJSAP, NJSAP@arcnj.org, and we can get some answers for you. Kate, thanks so much. That was amazing. Thanks everybody for attending and for coming to our Stay Healthy at Home webinars. And I hope you have a great day.